What's up, y'all? Welcome into another edition of DNVR Rams Live, presented by our friends at Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Hope everybody has had a solid start to their week. We're going live a day early with CSU playing on Friday these next couple of weeks. I kind of like it. We got activity in the Toyota chat already, which I love to see. No doubt about it. I'm ready to be hurt again, Ken says. Classic Michael Scott reference. Jacob says, I am so sad. It's been that type of year, to be honest. It's been a rough start. We've talked a lot about it. 1-3 was not the start that this program needed optically to get the masses to buy into what's being built. We're going to talk about what's at stake this week, talk about how hot Jay Norvell's seat really is. You know, I was pretty honest in the offseason. I didn't feel like the odds of an in-season firing were very realistic outside of basically catastrophe. And maybe that's a little bit dramatic to describe what has happened over this first month, but considering the fact that you're 1-3, you're 1-2 at home. You should be 0-3 at home. We all know they should have lost that game to Northern Colorado, whether it was a catch or not. Regardless, the performance was just unacceptable as a whole. They've really dug themselves a deep hole here, and if they fall to 1-4, especially if it's as ugly offensively as it's been these last couple of games, I mean, does the administration give Jay Norvell another home game at that point? I don't want to be over dramatic here, but I do think anything's possible at this point. And I think if they don't drastically right the ship here in a hurry, it's going to get ugly pretty quickly. And we're going to have some pretty difficult conversations, which again is a bummer because I've also been very honest about striving for continuity and how I felt like this staff working out would have been the best thing in the long run without, having to reset. And maybe it still can, but it's just unfortunate that we're in this position right now. I'm going to play a clip here to set the scene for the show. This is John Weber in studio with us in early August. I kind of asked him about just what would constitute a successful season. I asked him about if he and Jay Norvell are in line with their vision for the future of the program and just kind of what CSU is striving for right now, because I think his response here, it's a nice way to kind of set the scene for everything that we're talking about right here. CSU is not striving to be a middle of the pack type program. And yes, technically speaking, you could still win out. You could win a conference championship, and that would be a greatly successful year. But does anybody feel like that's going to happen at this point? I mean, that would take just such a significant 180 that it feels hard to even visualize or think of in any type of realistic form at this moment. They just have not passed the eye test in really any sense. And I guess I would ask you guys before we play this clip here, has the product on the field lived up to what John Weber is clearly striving for? So here is John Weber in studio with us. This was about a month ago. If you missed it, encourage you to go watch that in its entirety. We had Jay Norvell in with us and Emily Cohen as well. It was a fun day. But this is a couple of minutes from that interview with John Weber last month.
See any new type alternates or anything like that down the line?
No comment.
No comment. I get it. Say so much. You've been pretty open since taking over about, really wanting to strive for more and having big expectations. And, I mean, when you introduced Ali Farokmanesh, you talked about, we were a couple seconds from a Sweet 16 and that could be the floor, not the ceiling. How do you feel CSU as an institution is I guess, like, do you like where it's going and what you guys are doing to reach that goal? I mean, you did win 5 conference championships this past year.
We did. It was we had a great year last year, and someone else asked me that same similar question earlier today, and my first response was not satisfied.
Yeah.
Right. So here's what I'll tell you, that nothing moves the needle more for us as an institution than competing on the national stage and winning when we get there. So that's really the focus that we have. Every single one of our programs, is striving for more, is striving for championships. This is our last opportunity to put some Mountain West Conference trophies in the case, and we're going to do everything we can to collect as many of those as we can here in the next year and go into the Pac-12 with a full head of steam.
I understand every season's going to be different. There's going to be various factors, injuries, whatever, weird stuff can happen. But what do you look at when CSU football, for instance, like what would constitute a successful season to you, and what kind of factors into that?
So and you said you answered your own question a little bit there at the beginning, but what we all strive for is momentum and continuous improvement. And that takes many different forms and results in many different things. But what we're really after is how do we continue to build a program, and that goes not just for Coach Norvell, but it goes for us as well. There's a lot of things that we're doing differently off the field now in terms of how my direct team, how do we support our programs. So whether that's in the form of nutrition, whether that's in the form of some mental health support. There's a lot of things that we're doing behind the scenes that aren't making headlines that that are really, really important and really impactful on our programs.
I was fortunate to get an opportunity to speak with you a little bit out at Media Days, Jay Norvell as well. One of the things that I asked him was just like, do you feel that you and admin are on the same page in terms of your vision for the future of the program? And he said, you'd probably have to ask them that. So I'll pose that question to you. Do you feel that you and Jay have similar visions for what the program should be and are doing the things to get there?
We absolutely do. We both talk openly about, how are we able to compete at the highest level? How do we win a championship in our conference? And how do we get into the CFP? And then when we get there, how do we advance? In terms of what moves the needle more for our institution, the championships does it. And I know he's hungry for one. We're all hungry for one. And, we're going to keep going until we get that done.
Stood out to me from that clip. First of all, the fact that he mentioned being unsatisfied after last year. We said it a million times. It had to be the floor and not the ceiling. And when you hear him say things like striving for the playoff, winning championships, winning is what moves the needle. I mean, we have not seen anything that resembles even slightly the type of things that Weber is striving for with this program. And I do think that a lot of people on campus have been and still are rooting for Jay Norvell to find success. I do want to be clear there. Me talking about all this, and if you've listened to the show long enough, you kind of know my personality. It's not because I'm the hot take guy who wants to come out here and be the first one that's like, see, I told you he was going to get canned or something like that. It's not what I'm rooting for. It's reading the writing on the wall based on everything that we have seen over the last 6 weeks and really going back the last couple of years. I mean, it all kind of stems back to 2023 and the missed opportunities. You blow the game in Boulder, Hawaii, UNLV, you guys know the deal. You finish 5-7, come just shy of making the bowl. Then last year you reinvent the offense and it benefited them in a sense that they were able to get to a bowl game, grind out some tight matchups they probably wouldn't have won otherwise. But it left a lot to be desired with the way that the season ultimately fizzled out. And I don't want to be a broken record here, but this is why the UTSA and Washington State games were so important. Realistically, you were always going to be 1-1 through the first two. Obviously, it did not look anything remotely like what we would have expected against Northern Colorado, but it is what it is. Move past that. You get the win in the column, you're 1-1. Had you came out and even gone 2-2, the difference between being 2-2 and 1-3 from an optics standpoint, it's night and day. Because if you're 2-2, you get a conference win or two, and all of a sudden it's like, man, we're just about to bowl eligibility. I mean, the Rams, to even make a bowl at this point, would have to go 5-3 in league play. And even in a year where the conference, I don't feel like is incredibly deep, I feel like there's a lot of winnable games on the slate based on the talent that you have in that building. But based on what it's looked like these last couple of weeks, I just don't know how you have any confidence in CSU's ability to be able to right the ship here. Now, I do think they did the right thing in making the quarterback change. I think Jackson has been more composed in the pocket, physically maybe not quite as gifted as Braden in terms of raw arm talent and all that type of stuff, but did what he could to keep the offense on schedule. Clearly that wasn't enough. I credit Jay Norvell for looking in the mirror and doing the hard thing. Whether he was influenced to do it or not, I have no idea. But he did the right thing, and now giving Matt Mumme an elevated role in this play calling process. By the way, if you missed it, go check out the feature I wrote to find out what Matt Mumme had to say. Become a DNVR diehard, a great way to support our work. I share a lot of what I capture on the show, but some of that more intriguing stuff I kind of try and keep as a special reward for those that subscribe to the site and support the writing. So felt like that was a really interesting piece for Ram fans. Also published a piece on Owen Long, who is, quickly putting together a pretty impressive season. I mean, he'll have to keep up the crazy pace, but he's at the moment on pace to finish with the top 10 season all time and total tackles. I kind of went through the history there, pointed out how unique and rare what he is doing in the moment. So again, please go check all of that out. But the pressure is on for CSU this week, and if they cannot get it going here, if you come out and you fail to score a touchdown, or you lose by double digits, multiple scores to a San Diego State team who, in their credit, is 3-1, has a very stout defense. We'll talk about that. They're athletic on defense. They've got a good running back. Very typical San Diego State. Still, for whatever reason, cannot find a quarterback. I do think that Sean Lewis is a good coach, and I think he's going to have success with that program, assuming that they can get the type of support that's needed, institutionally and from the fans and whatnot. The fact that they're only averaging a little north of $25K for home games when they just built that stadium a couple of years ago is not a great sign. But I just think that if the Rams look dead in the water again, coming back at 1-4, while I don't personally feel like you gain a ton in terms of a competitive standpoint from making a move this early in the season, like, is it really going to change anything? You're opening up the possibility of a bunch of players hitting the portal. At the same time, you've still got 4 home games left. You've got Wyoming and Air Force still. I mean, you could look around and just say, we're not going to do this again. We're not going to have another home game that ends up being like these last couple of matchups. That's not the type of crowd we want for homecoming. That's not what we want for the Air Force finale at the end of the year. I could see it happening. And that is just not something that if you would have asked me 2 months ago would have even been on my radar, because I just felt like with the players that they had on the team, there was an opportunity here to show a hell of a lot more than what CSU has shown to this point. And I still feel that way. Like, I don't think you should be struggling this much offensively. No, the offensive line is not held up in the same way, and injuries are really starting to play a factor. But when you have Jalen Dupree, when you have Lloyd Avant, Justin Marshall, the type of, explosion and burst that those guys have, I mean, you shouldn't be struggling as much as you are. And at the end of the day, like, while I do think he's a good dude, that falls on coaching. And when you have people like me who are optimistic, sometimes to a fault, stubbornly optimistic at times, and really try and avoid going doom and gloom all the time. But when I'm sitting here and we're having to have this talk in early October, it's just not a good sign. It's not a positive indication of where the program is headed. And, regardless of what happens these next couple of weeks, even if you do kind of turn it around here, this is something we talked about the other day, but I mean, it feels like it's going to take a drastic swing to be able to keep Jay Norvell's job, post 2025. Like, I just don't think that even if you win 5-3 here down the stretch, grind it out a 6-6 season with like a New Mexico Bowl bid or something like that, that's not pushing for championships. That's not meeting the standard that was set at the beginning of the season by administration. And, to their credit, they've been unapologetic with those standards and very open about it. This hasn't been a situation where they're trying to be coy or tap dance around it. They know what they are committing institutionally. When Weber talks about some of that stuff, the institutional support that CSU is committing to athletics, that's night and day from 5-6 years ago. They have given this staff everything possible from a resources standpoint to succeed. In year 4, what we have seen to this point, the results have just not been good enough. And if they do not turn it around here on Friday night, and especially if it's ugly, I'm not saying like a loss guarantees, a firing or anything like that, but I do think we're now in that weird territory where anything is possible week to week. And considering coming into the year, the hope was to build off of what you did last year, to compete for a championship, to, maybe flirt with a double-digit win season or something like that. Where they're at right now, it's just insane to think about. Let's take a quick breather. We're going to talk more about San Diego State. Big matchup Friday night. Keep the questions, comments rolling in the Toyota chat. If I don't get to them right away, we can always come back full circle. But yeah, let's take that quick breather. Whether you need snapbacks, chuckers, fitteds, tees, or beanies, Branded Bills has you covered with performance and style. If you're looking for some gear to make your brand stand apart from the crowd, look no further than our friends at Branded Bills. They've got you covered with the best custom headwear. Start your order and their dedicated team will help you create the exact custom apparel you need. They've got a partnership with CSU as part of their on-campus collection. I got the gold one in the background there. I wear the black hat all the time. I see a lot of the coaches and students rocking Branded Bills. I know they've got a couple of them in the bookstore, but why pay full price when you can use that code BBDNVR for 15% off? Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. All right. You guys know the deal. Our friends at Coors Light encourage you to choose chill, to rise above, to do what it takes to be in that chill state of mind. Little things are going to add up. They're having an issue with our water reader outside or something like that. The city's been here like 55 times in the last 2 weeks. I got a crazy dog who does not handle that super well. Spilt toothpaste on my shirt before the show today. Just little things, stubbing your toe. They can bring you down. They can make you a grouch to be around. They can make you very unchill. And Coors Light, of course, is telling you to choose chill. Do the little things. Put yourself in a chill state of mind. Then when you're kicked back, when you're relaxing, maybe you're hanging with friends, watching some ball, crack open an ice-cold Coors Light. It's an out-and-cold refreshment. Cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smooth finish. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door. Visit CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado beer. All right. Looks like we've got a lively Toyota chat, which is great to see. Looks like people are being respectful too, which, considering the circumstances, I do appreciate. We got to talk about the tough things right now, but I am still, again, probably that stubborn optimism in me. There's still that dumb part of me that's the young kid in Angels in the Outfield. Hey, it could happen. You never know. And most of that stems from the fact that I just don't really believe in the Mountain West as a whole this year. But man, CSU has just underperformed in a way that seems really unfathomable. Like, even if you weren't a Jay Norvell supporter, I don't think you expected it to be this bad. The regression offensively is just confounding, and the penalties and some of the issues that just continue to persist. It makes you want to rip your hair out. It makes it really an unwatchable product. Like, it's one thing to be losing, but if you're losing shootouts every week, at least you're fun. That was kind of late Sunny, early Fairchild, like before it really started to fall apart around 2010 and that like 2008 range. You had the classic shootout with BYU where Joey Porter runs out onto the end zone and chest bumps Gartrell Johnson. Still one of my favorite moments of all time. That's still one of my favorite CSU games. I know they lost it, but it was just a lot of fun back and forth. It's one thing to be bad, but still at least be entertaining. The Rams have been bad and boring, which is a horrible place to be. Again, it was late Fairchild. It was late Bobo. It was basically the entirety of the Adazio era. It's hard to watch, and it's hard to get people to rally around. Something's got to give. They've got to find a spark here this week. And the tough thing is, is the injury situation is not helping CSU's cause. One of the nice things that's going to happen, moving forward is we're going to get an accurate, basically NFL style injury report before game day. We didn't get them for the non-conference matchups, but that's a new policy within the league. I imagine that has to do with sports betting and the rise of gambling. But the injuries, I mean, I was going through it. CSU is going to be without 8 players on Friday night, or at least that will be in the starting lineup. There will be 8 guys missing from the original 2 deep. 7 are injuries, and then obviously you make the quarterback change with BFN. But Jacob Ellis out for the game. Maybe he'll be back at some point because he's not listed out for the season, but based on the way Jay was talking about him on Monday, it didn't seem very encouraging. Oddly enough, the way he talked about Tanner Morley, it made it seem like he'd only be out a week or so. Look at the report. He's out for the year as well. That one's a brutal blow for an offensive line that's pretty young and inexperienced, especially in the interior. We're going to see how that impacts, the offense moving forward. Wasn't a great showing last week, and now you're going up against a defense who can really get after the quarterback. That's a tough blow. And the defensive line, you're down Gabe Jones and Mukendi for the season. Dylan Phelps, starting nickel's going to be out this week. Petey Tucker's been out a couple of weeks. He's still out. Jackson Warren's still out. So the injuries are not helping CSU's cause at the moment. Guys are dropping like flies. It's less than ideal. There's just been so much shakeup from what was expected versus what we are actually witnessing. Some of that necessary, the quarterback change, the offensive play calling change, all of that. But once you start having to shuffle guys in the interior of your offensive line and then your defensive line, it starts to add up. And so we'll see if they can kind of dig deep here and put together a solid performance. Here is Jay Norvell from Monday. This is just him giving some thoughts on San Diego State. Been kind of a weird season. We'll talk about it after he sets the scene for them. But yeah, here is Jay talking about what stands out about San Diego State.
Really looking forward to going to San Diego State. This is a good football team. This is a game we always look forward to. Extremely physical team, very competitive. Coach Lewis has done a good job. He comes from that Art Briles tree, was with Dino Babers for many years. Spread offense, goes fast, tries to push the ball down the field vertically, does a good job of that. Defensively, they've played very well this year. Had a really low scoring game this past week, 6-3. But they played very physical on defense. They're athletic. They do a good job of covering. And it's a game we always look forward to. This game always comes down to turnovers and special teams. And so we're going to be really focusing in those areas this week.
Historically, he's not wrong. San Diego State always been a run-heavy, defensively minded, quality special teams type program. Feels like they always have a stud kicker and punter. Usually they have one of the more electric guys in the kick return game. I think a lot of that is going to be a factor. I do want to address one comment here from Kevin, because I've seen a lot of people be very irked about Jay Norvell's phrasing of the non-conference slate as the preseason, and I feel like that's been interpreted as the staff saying that those games don't matter to them or that they view it like an NFL preseason. It's not a term that I feel like is super common, and is one I have heard veteran coaches, especially. I feel like it's more of a 70s, 80s type term. It just means non-conference. I think we're reading too much into that. I can pretty much promise you, like, they care about those games. They weren't just trying to punt on them. They knew the expectations. They knew the pressure coming in. Jay was coaching for an extension this year. They weren't just going to completely punt on them. I know that the Texas game last year did kind of add some fuel to the fire of that narrative. And I think that's fair, to be frank, for those that have been annoyed with it. And I've been very honest about the fact that September continues to be a living nightmare of an experience for CSU fans. Very clearly, it needs to be better. But I would push back on the idea that they didn't care about these games, or they weren't trying to win, or something like that. Or, they're we're 1-3, it doesn't matter. I don't think that's true at all. Just trying to keep it real. But Let's talk about the San Diego State team a little bit. Again, very stout team defensively. They produced 2 shutouts. Their season has been very weird. Like I told you 2 weeks ago, their what was it, like 34-0 over Cal or whatever it was at home was one of the more shocking results in the Mountain West that I can remember. I mean, first of all, everybody was kind of falling in love with Cal, talking about them as a sneaky play in the ACC, maybe a fringe CFP contender or something like that. And then San Diego State whoops on them 34-0, has me questioning basically everything I thought about them. And then they go out on the road and play Northern Illinois and grind out a 6-3 win, 2 field goals. So neither of these teams, CSU or San Diego State, scored an offensive touchdown last week. But San Diego State found a way to grind it out against Northern Illinois. Credit to them. It's been ugly, but credit to them and UNLV for skanking out some ugly games against the MAC. Those are the type of bad losses you have to avoid. And frankly, kind of the difference, between a program like CSU and San Diego State over the last 10 years is like, maybe San Diego State isn't Boise. Maybe they haven't been able to completely live up to what I think is a very high ceiling for them as a program. I mean, San Diego, great campus, the amount of talent that you can recruit in that region. I mean, I've always felt like it's a sleeping giant. They've invested in the facilities, all that. But I mean, they still have managed most years. It's been a little bit of a down stretch these last couple, but for the most part, over the last 10 to 15 years, like they've been a very solid program who punches up in games like they had against Cal, who finds a way to grind out the ugly ones when, it's not working for them offensively, even despite the fact that they never seemingly have a quarterback who you would rate in even the top 6 or 7 of the conference. Feels like they almost always have a bottom half quarterback. They find a way to win, and they find a way to get it done, which has just not been the case with CSU. It is a matchup that coming into the year didn't feel like was all that intimidating because you kind of knew what they would be. You knew they would have some athleticism on the defensive side. You knew they were going to be a team that was going to run the ball consistently. Was going to run the ball with consistency, excuse me. You knew that Jaden Denegal is a big, strong dude under center who can really make an impact in the run game, but could he make a massive leap in the passing game? That was TBD. From what I've seen, hasn't done a ton of it, but I do think they've done a better job of having success on play action and building off of that run game, something that I wish CSU would have been able to do more last year when they were running that, pro style, more West Coast based offense. I feel like this is a winnable game. I am not shocked that the spread is now up to 6.5 in favor of San Diego State after the injury releases. But I don't think this is a game where the feeling should be as down as it seems to be with the fan base. Like, I'm not arguing with anybody. Again, like at this point, if you think it's all roses, it's just delusion. But this is a game where you should be able to match up pretty decently. Like, injuries aside, I do think that's a factor that swings it by a couple of points. But like a lot like what I said last week, could you score 25 points? If you score 25, that's probably enough to win this game, unless you're, giving up a bunch of pick sixes or getting torched for 80-yard runs like you did against UTSA with Robert Henry. They've got a good running game. I wouldn't say they have an elite running game. It's not Donnell Pumphrey back there. It's not Rashad Penny or some of those studs we saw for years and years and years. This is a game where, again, if you get rolled after the showing that you've had against these fairly average teams, like good competitive programs, but not the type of teams you should be losing, by double digits to, I would put San Diego State very much in this vein. And again, that's kind of why I come back to what I said at the beginning, where if you fail to show up again, the schedule doesn't get a whole lot easier from here. Fresno is better than expected. Hawaii is legit. That's a tough homecoming matchup. UNLV's got some talent and athleticism. Still have some questions about them defensively, but I mean, these next couple of weeks, again, like if you start dropping these as well, now all of a sudden you're very realistically in a position where you could go 3-9, like we saw CSU do 15 times seemingly between 2005 and 2022. Like they've got to get it going now. It's do or die. I don't like using the term must win in a regular season situation, especially when by the numbers you still could lose this game, then win the next 7 and play your way into a conference championship game. And if you won that, yes, it'd still be a good season, but that's just not very likely at this point. Like I think you've got a better opportunity of winning some money, in Blackhawk or hitting the Powerball or something based on what we've seen to this point. I mean, it's just been a mess. Let's take one more quick break. Let's shout out 2 more partners. Please keep the questions, comments rolling. I'll get to as many as I can. I appreciate everybody staying tuned in despite how the season has gone. I know it's been brutal. Hopefully we'll have some fun stuff to talk about at some point. But if not, we'll make the best of it. And hey, at least basketball is right around the corner. You know that moment, the one where you realize you left your favorite pair of sunglasses at the beach or on the roof of your car or in a hotel room somewhere. Panic sets in. You know you're never going to see them again. You can do the whole song and dance, try and call the hotel. Hey, has anybody seen these? Anybody turn them in? They're probably long gone. You don't have to worry about that with Shady Rays. They take all of that stress and struggle out of the process. They really are a game changer. They make affordable sunglasses that are stylish, that hold up well, that are great for any setting. You can dress up in them. You can wear them in the pool. They're highly durable. They've got polarized lenses that work great. I wear my Shady Rays all of the time. And again, every single pair is backed by lost and broken replacements. So if you lose them, if you break them, it's whatever. They'll replace them, no questions asked. We've teamed up with Shady Rays to bring you an exclusive offer of 35% off. All you got to do is head to shadyrays.com. Use that code DNVR for 35% off. Try for yourself. The Shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA. For generations, Toyota's built durable legends destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails, whether you're hauling the weight of the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you. Check out the Tacoma. Check out the Land Cruiser. They've got 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, like the 4Runner. You'll see about 1 million of those on I-25, which makes sense. They're perfect for hitting the slopes. They're perfect for cruising around town, still get good gas mileage. Everything you need for the chaotic experience that is dealing with Colorado weather. 16 hybrid vehicles to choose from so you can reduce your carbon footprint. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics. They are the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. Kevin says, you mentioned in your article about Mummy that he has a lot of faith in JB and wants him to go be electric, get the ball in players' hands. Do you think we actually see a more aggressive approach? Let's get into it. We can come back around and talk about the San Diego State players to know, because I think really this matchup more than anything is about what is CSU able to do to spark themselves offensively. We've heard a lot of talk these last couple of weeks about needing better execution from the quarterbacks as well as the receivers. Felt like the receivers struggled far more than I would have anticipated against Washington State, a secondary that hadn't exactly lit up the world. I encourage you again to become a diehard, go read the piece in its entirety. But as Kevin is talking about here, one of the things that Matt kind of emphasized was that Jackson Brousseau is a guy who historically has won a lot. He's a 4-time state champion in high school, multi-sport athlete. He's really calm, cool, and collected when you deal with him. I mean, doesn't say a whole lot in interviews, but he has the team, I think, rallied around him in the sense that they're rooting for him to win. I think he's very likable, and I do think he's a guy who can, keep the offense on schedule. I don't think he's somebody who's going to be necessarily an elite quarterback at the collegiate level. Very few guys are, to be fair. But I do think that the receivers also have to do a better job of helping him. And I think that the offensive line has got to do a job of keeping pressure out of his face. If they can do that, if they can get some guys open a little sooner, I think that will help the offensive approach. Do I think all of a sudden it's going to look like a completely different playbook or something like that? No, I think it's more about trying to simplify some things and basically trying to find the hits that work for you. You know, if you play Madden or the NCAA games, everybody knows the like 2 or 3 plays that you establish for yourself that become your go-to. Does CSU have a go-to play right now? Like a couple of years ago, you know, you had a ton of success with crossers, and then there was kind of this deep comeback that BFN and Torrey love to hit on with consistency. It just doesn't feel like they've done that. And part of the problem is guys are struggling to get open. One of the things when we talked about was the route running can improve. Feels like guys aren't necessarily poor route runners, but they aren't finishing their routes, which is, you know, maybe leaving some plays on the table. I do think that we'll see more pre-snap motion, which is something we saw a ton of at Nevada. We saw quite a bit of it in 2023, and I don't know if we've seen enough of that these last couple of years. You know, I think we'll try and see them get guys moving, get them, you know, off the line of scrimmage, get the ball in their hands, see if you can make a guy miss and you know, take a play, kind of like what we saw pretty consistently with Justice Ross Simmons a couple years ago. Even Caleb Goody last year. I mean, they did some of that for him. Like, we just haven't seen very much of that with consistency. And I think that's some of the stuff that both Mummy and Norvell are talking about. Again, just because Jay's not the one communicating with the quarterback, because Mummy is the one who will be calling the plays, it's not as if he won't be a part of the game plan or the offensive approach altogether. These guys are all constantly communicating with each other. I mean, Chase Holbrook, the quarterback coach, he's involved in that process as well. I'm sure they're even talking to, you know, Carson, the quarterbacks. Like, it is a collaborative effort, but clearly they've got to shake up something here. And with that in mind, here is Jay Norvell kind of talking about what he's seen from Jackson Brousseau and kind of what they're trying to do in terms of sparking some confidence with these receivers.
Jackson really competed hard in the game, did a good job scrambling. I think he had 8 checkdowns in the game where he threw the ball to the back after going all the way through his reads. And that's the kind of progression that we got to have from our quarterback. You know, going back and looking and now anticipating, getting ready for San Diego State. You know, we got our preseason done. We're excited to start our conference play. And I think we know about our football team. I think we understand our strengths and weaknesses. I think we're making the proper adjustments as a staff to move forward and to really accentuate the strengths of the players that are playing for us. You know, that's one of the things offensively we've done. We've looked at, you know, Jackson's strengths, the things that he really likes and does well, and we're going to try to emphasize and really expound on those things, from our communication as a staff to how we call things. Everything that we do is going to work to inject some energy and life into that, into the offense, into his position. So,
all right, one of the things that I kind of hope to see with the offense this week, and I think some of the people in the chat are alluding to this when talking about the sub packages and the frustrations with that. I think one of the things that Norvell does at times is maybe overthink and get a little too cute. And I think a good example of that was on that first offensive series. You're running the ball, Dupree breaks off a couple of big runs in a row, and now instead of just leaning on that, going down, getting 6, you go to this sub package, you try and run the option, you lose 6, and it just kills the drive. We don't need to see 15 different looks. We don't need to see offense be all that complicated, to be honest. Some of the best offenses are very, very simple. It's just about being able to keep the defense off balance and being able to execute the basics, which are 2 things that the Rams have really not been able to do with any type of consistency. Some of that's been on quarterback play. Some of that's been on a receiver play, leaving a lot to be desired. Some of that's been on the penalties. Some of it's probably been on play calling. I mean, it's not like one simple thing, but one thing that I do hope to see from Matt in terms of his approach with this game, if you're running the ball 6-7 yards a pop, Dupree, Avant, whoever it is, and you're going right down their throat, don't overthink it. Lean on that. Lean on it. Go score it. Make them fear that run game, and then build off of it in the passing game. I'm not saying like you have to completely change your mentality as a coach or anything like that. Obviously, he comes from the air raid background. He is a guy, just hearing how he talks, about Jackson Brousseau and wanting him to be electric and wanting to get these receivers involved. Like, they're going to want to throw the ball. When he was a head coach at the D3 level, they were top 10 in passing production every single year. He was the head coach at LaGrange College down in Georgia. Might be pronouncing that incorrectly. I'm not sure. They led their league in passing production every year. So like that is who he is. But I also think that he understands the concept of getting in the flow of a game and leaning on the strengths of your roster. And I don't think that's something that we've done enough of this year, as leaning on the strength of the roster, which is that talented running back trio. Outside of really that stretch against Northern Colorado in the third quarter, where they basically just took the ball out of Braden's hands and decided that like Lloyd and Jalen were the only way they were going to be able to get out of there with a win. I get you can't necessarily do that every single series, but lean into what's working. Don't get too cute. I'm hoping to see the sub package with a little less frequency. I'm not saying you can't go to it. I do think Taj is a guy who's athletic and a unique weapon for you if used properly. But I go back to what I said on Monday, which is that he was billed as a Taysom Hill type, as a jack of all trades, who they were going to line up at receiver, who they were going to hand the ball to, they were going to do a little bit of everything with. We saw him catch one pass in that Washington game as a true wide receiver out wide. Since then, haven't really seen a ton of it. I mean, get the ball in his hands on a crosser. Why not? He runs well. At least that would be a different look than just a direct snap and him trying to go up the gut against 9 guys in the box with an offensive line that's, probably not built for that style of play, especially when the defense knows that it's coming. I just think that they need to simplify things. And we've heard both Norvell and Mummy say that that's going to be the plan. But does it happen in actuality? That's what I want to see Saturday night. Couple of other things that I think are going to be key for CSU. You've got to stop the run and make San Diego State beat you through the air. If Denegal throws for 300 yards and multiple touchdowns and you lose, but you did what you could to sell out and stop the run, I can live with it. It would be tough to watch. It wouldn't be very fun for CSU fans, but I just mean from a strategic standpoint, I would understand what you were doing there. If they're going for 5-6 yards a pop, they're in third and short. It's kind of like playing Air Force. You're going to be in for a long night. They're going to go for it a lot on fourth down in those instances. Denegal is a guy like Taj Bullock, who San Diego State loves to lean on in those short yardage scenarios. You're missing some guys in the defensive interior. You're going to have success on early downs, and a lot of that starts by stopping the run with their offense. On the other side, you've got to prevent negative plays. You gave up a couple of sacks last week. I think it was 9 tackles for loss. You got to protect the quarterback better, and you got to prevent some of those negative plays. They're backbreaking. They kill the momentum of a drive. And if you're going to have any opportunity of Jackson finding a rhythm here and getting something in sync with these receivers, the O-line has got to play better than they did last week against Washington State. And to be honest with you, that's a little bit unnerving because you're going up against a defensive front seven that I would say is far superior to anything you played since Washington. That said, who knows? Because it feels like CSU held up better against Washington than they did against any of the teams they played the last couple of weeks. This stupid sport is really breaking my brain this year. Finally, do what you can to increase the margins. That's kind of a general term, but you've got to reduce the penalties. You've got to have quality special teams play. When you're struggling and you're committing 75 penalty yards a game and you're getting field goals blocked and missing key field goals and stuff like that, it only makes your margins that much tighter for a team that frankly doesn't have that type of wiggle room to work with. They've got to play far cleaner when it comes to the penalties and just the little elements of the game. Again, if you're missing field goals, if you're giving up punt returns for touchdowns, big kickoffs, stuff like that, you're probably not going to win. Like at this point, with what the offense is doing, you basically need a perfect game everywhere else. You need a lot of help. You need the defense to come up with turnovers and create explosive plays the other way. Big spark plays is what I call them. I don't know if that's a term that everybody uses, but I've heard people use basically just the type of plays that spark a win or spark a loss, frankly. And CSU has found a way to shoot themselves in the foot basically every way possible this season, and that's the kind of stuff that I would like to see them clean up. If you lose 34-31, but the offense is making plays, San Diego State they're out there making plays as well, but you're not committing penalties. It's back and forth, it's execution, it's thriller. I can live with that. What I can't live with is another week of 3 points and 5-6 drives in a row with nothing and the untimely turnovers and then the penalties and all that type of stuff. Like, again, it's one thing to be bad, but you can't be bad and boring. And the Rams have been bad and boring these last couple of weeks, and I'm really hoping we see that change. Just a couple of things to know about San Diego State, I suppose. They've been pretty boom or bust. They average 24 points a game. But when you look at the game logs, they scored 42 points week 1 in a shutout win over Stony Brook. Not a ton to take away from that, other than they actually took care of business against an FCS team, unlike CSU. Got rolled by Wazoo, so they have that in common. Was in Pullman, 36-13. Then they come back and thump Cal, 34-0. Seems like everything's solved. Seems like the offense. Okay, we got something working here. Cal had some turnovers in that game, but still. Then they go out on the road against Northern Illinois and fail to score a touchdown. They're a hard read offensively, other than what they want to do. They want to run the football. I think turnovers are a big factor in this one. If you can get a strip that you recover, if you can get a turnover to Denegal is not the most accurate quarterback in the world. I think the 2 or 3 big plays like that could really drastically increase CSU's likelihood of winning this game, because I think if it's a clean game from San Diego State at home, they probably can get just enough in the ground game to put together, as long as you're not giving up a ton of explosive plays. Like, they're probably going to put 20 at least on the board. Again, I keep coming back to that. Can you score 25? Not much of anything that I've seen over the last couple of weeks makes me think it's possible, but I think if you can score 25 points, it would probably be enough to win this game. A couple of players to know: running back Lucky Sutton. He leads the team in rushing. Been a guy who's been in their program for a couple of years, kind of waited for his opportunity, averaging 5 yards a pop right now. Jordan Napier is their number 1 receiver by a wide margin. He has 25 catches. I think the next leading receiver has about 10. So you got to keep him out of the game. He is definitely Denegal's security blanket, a guy they like to get the ball to out wide, but also across the middle. You got to look out for him. Trey White, defensive end, I would say is the best pass rusher in the Mountain West. I was hoping that we would see a similar type dominance from Jaquez Evans this year, which has not been the case. Different roles, different positions, but similar responsibilities with what they do. Chris Johnson, really solid corner. He's got a couple of picks, 24 tackles plus 4 PBU. Look out for him. And then I love San Diego State's linebackers. Owen Chambliss, I believe how you pronounce it, 39 total, 3 tackles for loss. He's a Utah transfer, came over last year, but really made a big leap this season. Defensively is definitely where the majority of their, not blue chip, but upper tier talent is. That's pretty much it, I think, in terms of keys against San Diego State. If you guys got any questions or anything like that, feel free to throw them in the Toyota chat. Let's take a breather, and then let's get our Mountain West power ranking in, everybody's favorite moment of the week. All right. I continue to drop CSU in the power ranking. It hurts my heart, but what are we going to do? We got to have integrity with the process, right? They have now fallen from 2 in the preseason to 10, which again just speaks to the type of season that we've had. Nevada remains at 12. I saw a couple of, I think it was like the Mountain West Barstool account or whatever, did their power ranking, and they had Nevada above CSU, and whatever. Like at this point, CSU's been so terrible. I'm not going to argue with anybody and say, no, they shouldn't be last, but they're not the worst team in the league, despite how much it's been a struggle. Nevada and San Jose State have been the most uninspiring from a talent standpoint. That's what makes CSU more frustrating. They have guys like the backs who, as Kevin points out in the Toyota chat, are all averaging, 5 yards pop. Like they've got talent out there. I know Jackson Warren's been hurt, but even, Rocky Beers, Jordan Ross, some of these guys, you look at a team like Nevada, San Jose State, I mean, they don't have any of that. I have Wyoming at 9, just ahead of CSU. Both teams offensively, just a big question, but also playing pretty good defense at the moment. San Diego State, I have up to 8. They were at 10 a couple of weeks back, but when you thump Cal and then you grind out a road win, they deserve to pass CSU and Wyoming, especially sitting at 3-1. Utah State at 7, although some questions about them moving forward, depending on what happens with Bryson Barnes. He got dinged up a little bit in that Vanderbilt game. Back and forth for a little bit. They just didn't have the depth or the horses defensively to keep up with what is really turned into a pretty solid Vanderbilt team. I've got Air Force at 6, New Mexico at 5. No movement there. New Mexico did what they needed to at home against New Mexico State. Double-digit win over a bad NMSU team. Hawaii jumps 1 spot to 4. Solid win on the road. I've talked a lot about them defensively. Air Force did a good job of hanging around a little bit. There were a couple times I felt like Hawaii was going to pull away and maybe make that a more definitive win. But they're a sneaky contender. Them and Fresno State both. I have Fresno State just ahead of them because they won head-to-head on the island a couple of weeks back. But I'm pretty high on this Hawaii team. They're fun to watch and they're fun to root for. UNLV 2, Boise State 1, no movement there. Boise thumped App State. UNLV, I believe, was on a bye last week. I think there's a pretty big gap at this point between what we've seen from Boise and what we've seen from everybody else. I know everybody wants to put UNLV in that top spot. They're the fun pick, the new toy that everybody wants to embrace. I just think defensively, even though Boise's corners are not fantastic, they are far more consistent than anything that we've seen from UNLV on the defensive side. UNLV explosive though; they can score points, so they're going to be in it every week. They're fun to watch. I put them in the, if CSU's bad and boring, UNLV might be bad and fun, if that makes sense. But credit to them; they found a way to get a couple of good wins in. Ken says, "Should we have just hired Timmy Chang?" Joking, kinda. That is a tough one to swallow optically. The fact that who was supposed to be Norvell's wide receiver coach and left a couple weeks into the job to take that Hawaii gig has lapped CSU in terms of success as a program. And I mean, if they win again this year, that'd be 2-1 against Norvell head to head as well. That's not great, Bob. That's not great. Couple of picks for this week. I would stay away from the CSU spread with a 10-foot. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Both these teams are too weird. Don't get money involved in what's already going to probably be an emotional night. It just makes things worse. I have New Mexico winning outright at San Jose State. San Jose State 2.5-point favorites with the Lobos in town. I just don't understand that line at all unless there's a big injury or suspension or something that I'm missing. But that New Mexico team, they force turnovers, and San Jose State is glad to give anybody the ball at any given time. And New Mexico's going to run it down their throat. I think the Lobos win that game comfortably. Having said that, watch San Jose State win by 2 touchdowns because Vegas is almost never wrong. But that was a line that really jumped out to me as surprising. That'd be my bet of the week. I'd put it all on New Mexico. Give me Fresno to cover 13.5 against Nevada as well. And I wouldn't call it a rivalry matchup and a matchup between schools with a lot of history. I'm always hesitant. And Nevada's been one of those teams, as bad as they've been. They have kind of hung around in some of those games where they've been, double-digit dogs, especially in league play. They played a really tight game against Fresno. It's either last year or the year before in Reno. I guess it would have been last year because they're in Fresno this year. But give me Fresno to cover that. I just think Nevada can't score, and Fresno is at home in front of, they're averaging like 37,000 fans. That's a tough situation for Nevada. Give me Fresno to cover it. If you missed it, the Mountain West's motion to dismiss the Pac-12 lawsuit was denied, so that at least means we're likely heading towards some type of God, I'm drawing a blank on the word, which is perfect for being on a live show. Compromise is not the legal term, but you guys know what I mean. Like, I think at some point you negotiate down and you probably meet somewhere in the middle. My thing is, I think the Pac-12 can afford to draw this out much more than the Mountain West, who has a lot of money promised to UNLV and Air Force. Apparently a lot of money, promised to Northern Illinois as well. It's more ideal for both sides to find a resolution here to move on eventually. But the Mountain West does not have the money or the lawyers that the Pac-12 does. And I do think that is something that favors us, and the fact that none of the claims that the Mountain West wanted to get thrown out did. To me, that's a win for the Pac-12. Like, it at least shows that you're probably going to be able to negotiate some of that down. A settlement. Yes, thank you. My God, that was really making my brain itch for a second. Just could not think of the word. I think we're inching towards a settlement at some point. When that actually will be, who knows? It could be a month from now, could be years from now. I mean, this really could be a mess that goes for forever and ever. And in that case, again, I don't think the Mountain West can afford to play that game. And if you're UNLV, if you're Air Force, sitting there like, well, where's all that money we were promised? If you can't deliver it, then what happens? So that would be my big takeaway from all this, is I just think that the Pac-12 at the moment has more leverage. Maybe that's me being ignorant. I don't know. I'm not a law expert. I don't claim to be. Just a couple of final thoughts here before we call it a day. If you got any questions, comments, throw them my way. Please subscribe to the newsletter. If you're a Denver sports fan, it's free. I can get it in your inbox every morning. It's super easy to digest. Just, whatever's happened with the latest in the Denver sports world. I wrote about the Rockies going with an external GM hire for the first time in the 21st century today, which is at least somewhat encouraging. The first step is admitting you have a problem, right? What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, they're finally changing something up. But if you're into it, please subscribe. I really would appreciate that. I also wrote about underrated Halloween candies. It is spooky season after all. For a guy trying to lose weight for, a wedding coming up next fall, not the most ideal season, Thanksgiving food, the holiday foods, all this candy. I mean, it's tough, but I'm an appreciator of the underrated candies. I like the deep cuts. Everybody can go for a Reese's peanut butter cup, a Snickers. I mean, that's a blue chip. That's a first round prospect. Congrats on hitting on that. Give me a Mr. Goodbar. A Mr. Goodbar is the undrafted free agent that plays 15 years in the league. It's the Rod Smith of Halloween candy. Nobody's jumping at him. You can, if you're doing trade, you're trading candy with your siblings or something like that, you can get good value because people are just giving them away. And again, they're going to be the foundation of your team there. Super underrated. The last thing I wanted to say is just happy birthday to my younger brother, Brandon. He runs the Wing Shack and Sexy Sammy's on the CSU campus. If you're going to be around there, stop by, tell him happy birthday, tell him that I sent you. He's a great dude. My best friend, and I don't know where I'd be, in this world without him. So Ken says, what's the definition of insanity? Colorado State football. It feels like it. Or maybe it's me for choosing to build my career about talking about this team. It's been tough, but who knows? Maybe brighter days are ahead. I sure hope so. Thank you for listening to the DNVR Rams podcast presented by Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Much love, y'all. Always proud to be. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.